You're trying to love them, but they roll their eyes, they ignore you, or they push you away. So now what? Hi, everybody. We are Mike and Brenda Baker, and today we are talking about when your stepchild doesn't respect you, what you can do without overstepping.
Okay, so I think it's important to identify what's overstepping. So overstepping is atypical. It's not when you discipline the kid. That's not yours. It's not. Okay, because it's your house. We've talked about this. It's your house. You have rules. Nothing wrong with you expecting a kid to obey your rules. That's boundaries. Those are healthy boundaries. Overstepping would be if you and your spouse had already discussed what to do with said child and you took your own course and it was pretty much against what you and the other spouse had decided on. So overstepping is when you think you know better, because look, these are blended families and we highly push that these are indeed families. Families first, not just blended families, okay? But you got to understand that there are different dynamics. For one, you've got a kid in that house that even though you hold the office of mom or you hold the office of dad and that kid is not yours biologically, there are still ways and methods that the child is used to within a household without you. Okay, so that's why you and your spouse need to communicate. This is what we want to do with this kid, or multiple kids, And when you take it upon yourself and step outside of that and do something you know the other spouse wouldn't like with the kid that was theirs before a relationship, you've overstepped. Okay, kind of like using somebody else's toothbrush. you have overstepped. Okay,
That's a little different.
but. So here we're talking about stepchild disrespect. We're talking about step-parent authority and how these work into blended family challenges. So did you have anything you want to throw in under what overstepping is?
Well, I think overstepping can happen really, really easily when you don't even realize that that's what you're actually doing. And again, this is something that I wish somebody would have told me, but I didn't know anybody who was a step parent, to be honest with you. And so I was just kind of blind in the dark kind of, thing. And I was just bumping into walls. And then I was like, oh, that hurt, metaphorically speaking. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, there were many times that I stepped on toes when I actually wasn't even trying to. It's just, I didn't understand the dynamic. That's why we're here. That's why we're talking to you about these things, is because they are so important. And what we're trying to do for you is we're trying to help you to have the best co-parenting situation as you possibly can. Now, some people that you co-parent with, it doesn't matter what you do. And if you've been here very long, you've already heard that Mike's ex-wife was pretty, it didn't seem to matter.
Difficult.
Yeah.
We'll just go with difficult.
We'll go with difficult.
Yes, difficult.
When it was done one way, she wanted it the other way, and when it was done that way, she wanted it the opposite. It just never was a very good experience. But what you can do to minimize those conflicts is to really know from the very get-go what to do and what not to do. So that's why we're here.
Exactly. So that brings us to our first point. You probably think you already did a first point. No, I just wanted to define for you what overstepping could be, because it's going to look a little different in every relationship. So point one is identifying underlying issues. So you got to look at the reasons that the stepchild is rebelling or giving you flack. Is it a loyalty conflict? They don't want to like you. They feel like they can't like you and their bio parent back at the house.
The other house.
The other house, yeah. Is it that they have had poor past experiences? Now, what kind of past experiences am I talking about? Well, let's be honest. A lot of men and women are very hurt when they come out of those relationships. And unfortunately, a lot of them will run into another relationship.
Yep.
And so, what are you? Are you number 3, number 4 of, say, the women that the man has had in the house, or the men that the woman has had in the house? Now, I don't want you to think I'm passing judgment. That's not what I'm doing at all. Yes, we're a religiously based channel, but at the same time, we have compassion and grace.
Yeah.
Okay, people make mistakes. The point is, you're not making that mistake anymore. You've re-entered the marriage contract. So why is this kid acting up? Really, it's important to identify. But here's what you need to understand. Not every kid is going to talk to you about it. They're not just going to come out and say, you know what my problem with you is? Oh my gosh, would that be nice?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, would it be nice? But it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and it would be so much easier if stepkids
Yeah.
would just tell you the things, right? A lot of the times I would say stepkids don't, maybe they're young or maybe they're teenagers and they just don't want to talk about it. They're sick of it. Mm-hmm. They're tired of this whole game that their parent, your spouse has put them through. You got to remember, divorce is very, very hard on kids. It's the hardest on the kids.
Yep.
Because really, when it comes down to it, unless you have a 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off kind of, where the kids are going from one house and staying there for 2 weeks, and then going to the other house and staying there 2 weeks, it is really where they are homeless. They don't really have a place that they're at all the time. And so just understand that this is a very difficult transition for them. And maybe this is brand new for them, or maybe they're just sick of it. It's been going on for a long time. Mom or dad in your household has been going through a lot of different marriages and divorces. It just really depends on the situation. But often the lack of respect is they don't think you're going to stick around. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so did you already say that though? Did I repeat?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
It's just the whole point is they don't know if you're going to stick around because you may be, like I said, number 3 or number 4 in the line of whatever your spouse had going before you.
Yeah.
He or she just didn't marry them.
Yeah. And so that's when, this is the kind of situation that we really try to warn people against doing, is shacking up with each other. Now, I understand, you got hurt, you want to move forward in your life. Oftentimes, our culture tells people that it's better to live with them and sleep with them before you get married. We will tell you that that is not the best way to do things, and it actually increases your chances of getting divorced in the future. Go ahead.
The point here is living together is not a covenant relationship, and marriage is a covenant relationship. So don't fool yourself into thinking, well, I go to church and we're both Christians. We're just living together, but we're living in separate rooms. Okay, whatever. Don't get upset with people for judging you in that case. Okay, you are setting them up for failure and yourself up for failure. Side note, that was a freebie. But the whole point is that it's a covenant relationship. Okay, you need to treat it like a covenant relationship.
Maybe you should define that too, though.
Covenant?
Yeah.
Well, a covenant relationship is God has a covenant with you as a Christian. You have a covenant with your spouse, because remember, marriage is a representation of Christ and his bride.
Yeah.
Okay? He loved her so much, he gave his life for her. That's a covenant relationship. If you look up the core meaning of vows, vows is what I would call a seriously legal term. It's binding. It's not an oath and it's not a promise. Vows are heavy. Vows are serious. Scripture talks about vows very, very seriously and how you should be careful what you do with them. So, when you've given vows, you're in a covenant relationship and you need to treat it as such. Which brings us to number 2, unless you had something else on that.
Well, I did have one thing. The Bible talks about let your yes be yes. So if you gave your covenant, your vow, that is your yes being yes. It's not meaning that you can go and in 7 months or 12 years or whatever, when it's not working for you and you are not happy, that you can just move on. No. That's not what we're about. That's not what our channel is about. So honestly, this may not be the channel for you if that's been an issue for you, or you think that that's how Scripture reads. We're always going to be honest with you and tell you what we believe the Bible actually says. Now, in the comments on any of the popular videos, you see a lot of hate. And that's because people don't, honestly, people don't agree with some of our scriptural stands. And that's okay. They don't have to, but we don't have to agree with them. So
I've always said that if people are upset with you, at least you know they're listening.
Yeah.
So, number 2. So setting consistent expectations. And we touched on this a little bit in the beginning when we were defining what overstepping was. But you got the importance of clear rules and consequences. Now, there's a difference between consequences and punishment. All right. And this is something you have to agree. You and your spouse have to jointly come together and say, this is what we're doing. And this is how you avoid overstepping. So we've already established you need to identify with the kid. Well, Mike, what if the kid doesn't talk to me? I don't care. You're the adult. It's your job to show love, show kindness, show love, show kindness. And when they show hate and they show vitriol and they show, show love, show kindness, show love, show kindness. You need to show consistency. And this is part of consistent expectations in the fact that when you guys sit down and you establish rules and you establish how important they are, you got to establish them to the house. Otherwise, they don't count. It can't just be your rules and their rules. Okay? Yeah. Well, hey, I want you in bed by 10, even though your dad wants you in bed by 8.
Yeah.
Not that anybody sends their kids to bed at 8 that aren't 7 years old. But but you get the point. The point here is I told you bedtime's 10. Well, Dad said I could stay up till 11. Dad's wrong. 10. Because the point here is one parent does not necessarily have the right to override the other parent, even in a house where there's biological and steps. Okay? Remember what I said, and I want you to listen very carefully. One of you holds the office of mom, one of you holds the office of dad, and the rest are the children of the household.
Yeah.
They are family. You are family. If you are going to override another spouse, you owe that spouse an apology. I don't care if it's your bio kid. If you agreed with your spouse to we'll say, just for the sake of argument, 10 o'clock was the bedtime. Oh, well, I usually let him stay up till 11. Honey, that's not what we agreed on. Well, it's not going to kill him this one time. Bull crap. I will absolutely call bull crap every time. What should be coming out of that spouse's mouth is, you're right, we did agree on that. Sorry, kiddo, off to bed. Because I'll tell you right now, you want that kid to have respect for your spouse, show respect to your spouse. Yeah. You want that kid to have respect for the step, show respect to the step.
And really, when we go to that example and we say, hey, both spouses decided on 10 p.m., maybe the child had something come up or they wanted to do something special. When you have the boundary that all kids in the house have to ask ahead of time so that you two can discuss it, it's nothing but good. Because, if the kid was to say, hey, can I stay up late? I'm sorry, but you know the rule. You need to ask ahead of time so that I have time to talk to whatever the kids talk to or call your spouse. That's a very important point because you're still respecting what you and your spouse agreed on. You're being, you're abiding in your word, or what? Yeah. What would it be called? You've given your word, and so you're sticking to that.
You're being consistent. I mean, we talked about consistent expectations. Consistent expectations flow in two directions. One direction is you both agreed on a rule, which means that's towards the kid. Yeah. The second direction is when the kid gives you pushback and it's come back to you. Now consistency would dictate that you have a united front.
Yeah.
That's not what we said. Not what we said. It is time for bed. So let me clarify for just 1 second on this rule, though. I'm not talking about if your husband's an over-the-road truck driver and he's not there every night and you decide to let a kid stay up till 11. I'm not saying you got to call him on the road and say, hey, we got to talk about this. I don't know. No. Okay, you're the parent in charge. You're there. The other parent's absent due to work. Do what you got to do, but do it within the respect and confines of the relationship and the established boundaries between you and your spouse.
Yeah. And, say the kid did do it the right way and asked you ahead of time, and then you and your spouse had time to talk about it, and they came and asked you, and you're like, okay, yes, we talked about it and we're good with it. So you can stay up until 11, say, okay? That's a great way to stay together as a couple and to put your marriage first, which is the number one priority in your household,
Yes.
is your marriage. Now, if you haven't been here before and you're listening to us for the first time, we're not saying neglect your children. We are saying that the marriage has to come first because that helps the kids to have security, even if you're not their bio parent. Okay? So that's very important.
Let me give you a picture that just popped into my head about what that looks like. Every time we say put the marriage first, we get a whole slew of people that are just hateful and say kids come first.
Yeah.
Well, you're not going to find that in Scripture.
No.
Straight up. If you are of the attitude and the mind that kids come before marriage, put your Bible away. You're not reading it. Okay? So here's the deal. If you're going to make a hamburger, you're absolutely atypical hamburger. Atypical. I'm not talking about carnivore lifestyles or keto or any. Atypical hamburger. It's going to come with at minimum a bun and a burger, right? That would be what's expected. Okay?
That's the minimum.
That's the minimum. And what we're telling you is that in the marriage relationship, the minimum is the marriage comes first. However, that doesn't mean that when you put the marriage first, or in this case the hamburger, you don't get to put anything on it. No lettuce, no tomato, no ketchup, no mustard, no mayonnaise. That's not what we said.
What about bacon?
Well, that's meat. Anyway. So the point here is you've got all the condiments, and maybe some of you think it's silly, but I believe pictures really communicate. That's why Jesus spoke in parables. He was drawing pictures, okay? You are still going to put on that hamburger what you want on that hamburger, but you're not going to do it without the meat in the bun typically. Atypical, remember? All right, we're talking the same thing here. The meat of the relationship is the marriage, and the kids are the condiments. They're the extras. You're still going to have them on there. You're still going to enjoy them. They're still going to be part of the whole burger, but you can't have a burger without the core components. Okay? Can't do it. Anyway, are we ready for number 3?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
One of the things that I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about is I did have a stepchild who was not a fan of me. And when conflict arose between he and I, typically, especially if Mike wasn't home, and I could see that the tension between us was getting worse and worse, I would actually end up saying the son's name, and then I would say, no, thank you. And he would understand that meant that it was time to stop, okay? Now, if he didn't listen to no, thank you, I would just simply say, when you have a better attitude, you can come out from your room. But for now, you need to go and change your attitude. Now, this one really had a hard time with me because, well, I don't really even know why, to be honest with you.
You made him work.
There was,
Because you made him actually do his schoolwork and whatnot.
Yeah. And he was a very lazy kid. So, I was constantly in this situation where I had to be the one that told him no, because Mike worked a lot. Remember, we were a one income family. I stayed at home. Mike did all the working. So he had anywhere between 2 and did you have 4 jobs at one point?
I had 4 jobs at one point, but that was pretty short-lived. But it wasn't uncommon for me to have 3 jobs.
Yeah. So he would be gone from, say 6:30 in the morning until 11 at night. Mm-hmm. So on weeks that we had his boys, I was the parent. And whether that son liked it or not, he had to deal with me because obviously his dad wasn't there. But anyways, so what that kind of did was, he got really frustrated with me because he didn't want to be put in his room, which I never physically put him in there. I'm an only child, so I had to devise some sort of a way to get out of the situation if it got hairy. Now, he was never outwardly disrespectful per se to me, and if he ever was, he dealt with dad when dad got home, or in the morning or whatever. But, my biggest thing that I was trying to do was to make sure that I was making the decisions that I was making, that Mike was good with them. And Mike really helped me because he was very clear about what he wanted his children to do, which obviously they were all his children. Because the son that I brought into the marriage, Mike adopted. And then the two that we had together, obviously, So I think I'm belaboring the point, but that is one way that I was able to really diffuse the situation, get out of the situation, and then we could kind of deal with each other in a better way, because that kid would sit in his room for quite a while. And I never had a time period that he had to stay in there. I was just like, when you can have a better attitude with me, then you can come back out. And it really helped me, because then I was like, okay, it's time for me to change my attitude too, because this kid is really upsetting me. So that really did help me. And I feel that I never overstepped when I did those things. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
I think we all overstep at some point.
Well, yeah.
I mean, that's part of how you pick up boundaries is overstepping. That doesn't mean, I'm not suggesting you overstep to find your boundaries.
Yeah.
But I think, you can't be afraid to set the boundaries because you're afraid of overstepping. You're going to overstep, and it's okay. Before I head into number 3 here, I will say one of the things that really torches me right now is this whole parental alienation thing. And I've mentioned it before. Yeah. So the parental alienation thing really chaps me, because what happens is you've got all of these emotions from a kid. Now, let me just say that I have seen nothing but endless nonsense about how it's always the parent's fault, never the kid's fault. Always the parent's fault. Never, literally, I've heard thousands of people say it now, which is just nonsense to me. But here's what I can't help but think is, Brenda and I, the entire time the boys were growing up, were adamant that when we made a mistake, we would apologize to the boys.
Yes.
And there were hundreds of times that we took them in their room, or we were all in the living room, and we said, hey, we did this. That was not the right thing for us to do. We are very sorry, and we would like you to forgive us. We did it a lot. Mm-hmm. So when you hear me say I have no more apologies to give, I'm not kidding. Because I made them all as they were growing up. Now, maybe a lot of other parents didn't, but my point here is part of consistent expectations, part of identifying underlying issues is being consistent in your forgiveness as much as you are in your rule setting.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about the forgiveness you seek from the child. If you make a mistake, if you lose your cool, like Brenda's talking about, you have to take a step back. You have to say, I need to get a grip here. Yep. And you have to go to the child, regardless of how arrogant that child is, or how much they get under your skin, or just, I'm sorry. And not like that.
Yeah.
Okay, you need to go tell them you're sorry, and you need to say it lovingly, and you need to move on. But that brings us to point number 3, fostering open communication. So, the only way that you're going to build understanding and mutual respect is honest conversations. Okay, so really these 3 tie together. So we've got, identifying underlying issues, we've got setting consistent expectations or boundaries, and then we've got open communication. You can't have any of these without the other.
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about open communication, that means you two, as the mom and dad of the house, as the husband and wife of the house, have to sit down and if you need to, get a notebook and write things down. Here's where we agree. Here's where we don't agree. Here's where the boundaries need to be. Here's where I think the boundaries are right now and don't need to be. And let me tell you one other thing. Okay, this is something that blended families don't seem to get. There needs to be a point where you guys sit down and actually air to each other what it is you feel the other one is doing with the kids that you don't appreciate or agree with. Well, honey, I think, and I'm not talking to Brenda, honey, I think you're too soft on them. And when your hair starts rising on the back of your neck, or you start getting uppity, you need to take a step back. I'm talking about a respectful conversation where you can both say what needs to be said. Because otherwise you're just going to bury that crap and it's going to blow up in your face one day. You need to sit down and say, hon, I don't appreciate, or I feel that be careful about it. You're not looking to dig, right? But you want to be forthright too. Hon, I think that you're way too easy on that kid. He does this, you tell him 8 times, and then you never do anything about it. And you as the bio parent maybe need to take a step back and go, do I do that? And be honest about it, because you're about to let them know what you don't appreciate about them. And the only way that you can do that in return is if you're honest about what you've done. Otherwise, it's log and spec stuff, all day.
Yep.
And that's what you want to avoid. Open communication means we need to be able to talk even if we offend each other a little bit. And then, hug and make up when it's done. But you guys are a family. This is your last marriage. And I don't mean you're going to divorce and that's it. I don't mean you're going to the I'm not ever dating again side. I'm talking about you committed, this is it. You guys are together. Period. We're not divorcing. We're going to be happy if we got to kill each other to do it. And that sounds funny, but some days it feels that way. I'm not going to lie. Does it not?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes it does. Sometimes,
But it's been worth it. 100% worth it.
Yeah.
110% worth it. Good.
Yeah. And on that point about the open communication, you need to have and establish open communication with your stepchild as well. It's only going to help. Now, based on their age will definitely determine how quickly that process happens. If you're coming into teenagers, it's most likely not going to happen at all. I'm not saying don't try, okay? But that's part of where, and if you go back quite a ways actually in this channel, you can find several ones that we did back in, it's been a while, and maybe we should update those, but about, different things you can do with stepchildren to, we always did
Build a bridge.
one-on-one dates, but they weren't obviously dates. They were just time together, one-on-one with each child in the household. Mike, although he didn't have very much time, he always made it happen, okay? Every single month, he made sure that he did something with each of them. Yeah. So it's really important, to do the things to build the relationship, but then also, especially in times of conflict, it's very important to show grace to your stepchild, especially the one that you have the most conflict with, because that one, often, if there's more than one stepchild, can and will work on the other stepchildren in the household, and they will try to turn them against you. So do everything you can to try to establish boundaries, good relationship, open communication.
And consistency.
Yeah, exactly. That's so important because it's only going to help your family to become unified to whatever extent the children will allow, okay? Now, it's not based on what they want per se, but they do have their own boundaries. And so just do your best to be honest, apologize when you need to. Any of these things that you would do with your own children, do those with the stepchildren too. Because the more that you can treat all the children in the house the same, or, try, to divide your time, the better your blended family is going to be. And these blended family challenges actually start to minimize, especially if the children in the household are younger. You can really build rapport with them as you go. So, anything else? All right. Well, with that, we are done with today's session, and we're so very grateful that you're here with us today. Don't forget that we do have the Blended Family Momentum book. And so the link is going to be down below. We're so grateful that you were here today, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.